Hello everybody, welcome to my oil painting session. And today we're using an image I took a photograph of from China, from the place called Chengdu, which I'll tell you a little bit more about as we paint. Gorgeous city, little central part of it near, well, it's the whole city is situated just on the border with Himalayas. So it's one of the places where the climbers set off for their expeditions. So very traditional city center, gorgeous tea rooms with these elongated open windows. And what I'm interested in today is creating how the composition can help us out to create that kind of heat of the day and coolness of the tea room. I'm interested to paint loads of varieties of darks, having those contrasts. But the composition today is super important because it's without it, it's hard to do the exciting painting. So what I'm going to do a few thumbnail sketches. You can just watch me or you can just follow through. I'm going to do a few smaller ones. My paper, my board is not as narrow as that. Just make it a little bit wider here. The smaller you do them, the easier it is for you to see the whole image together without too many exciting details of the lanterns and the windows and the trees and something else in there. So what I'm interested in finding the space of how much white, well, not white, light I'm going to have within my painting. So I have got this open window space, okay, so something there, and the rest is going to stay dark. So that is my main principle of the whole sketch, and the rest is tweaking of it. Okay, so that will be the whole concept. Okay. There will be reflections, there will be all sorts of other things in there. But let's find the shape of it. So we have got a window with the shutters. So we've got sharp perspectives because it's a very tall, open space. So how much space we're going to have, kind of the width of the window in comparison to the kind of the gap on the left, the gap on the right, especially including the shutter there, yeah. So I might plan, if I'll divide the whole piece into three segments. I've got the narrowest one here for the dark shadow. I've got the slightly bigger one and the slightly bigger one on the left. So that's my planning, to make all these sections separate. Okay. Now the height wise, we're just going to do it as a maximum, probably a little bit more shallower line for the bottom line, a bit more steeper angle for the top. Okay. Now we have the reflective shutter here. So that's going to come up somewhere here, but it's not going to take too much space. And it is partially going into our window space. So we're going to have some of the perspectives there. The perspectives, all of that one's going to go there. That's my picture. Okay. So then we're going to have a little gap and all sorts of other things. So that will be my basic kind of planning for it. And within the window, that's just what's exciting as well, is going to have few lines of the rooftops of the street next, or just while we're looking at very narrow street, almost like medieval Italian streets of French. So, and what we have here, we've got another perspective lines which are going to the kind of vanishing point somewhere there, when our door would have gone to the vanishing point somewhere there. Okay, so just to give you an idea, so these are going to be our street lines, if you wanted to do any rooftops, anything else in there. Okay. And then another interesting point I want to make is the volume of red. So we've got the beautiful lantern, I think there's another one here. Oh, there are just 3 different shapes in here. Okay, there is a 4th one with an image there. Now in China, 4 is a bad luck, so there is a bit of I think something browny, orangey in color. I think might be a stand advertised in the cafe. So maybe there will be another lantern for me there, or another point of red. So what I've done here, just sketched a little bit earlier, an overall layout of the patterns of the red. So that's maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there. And then I'm going to just put a little bit of darkness to see, well, that's going to be all of that. So that is going to be my window frame. Sometimes it's very hard to understand what it is on the photograph, especially if you haven't been there, if you haven't taken the photograph. So this is my overall window with a shutter on right here, and this shutter is going to be all in the shadow as well. So I'm just going to shade it as well. So all of that is going to be there. So in a way, that's how we're arriving into that pattern of light and dark. So all of that together makes it easier for us to see. Okay, so when we start doing the extra lines and extra perspective shapes, this is the type of things I'll be referring, and I might be bringing my sketch to give you a bit of guidance. Okay, but we're going to try to keep it simple, so everything is on quite clearly. Okay, with mainly light and dark. Okay, right, and I think we're ready to get started. So let's get started with our painting as our linear bit more development. Let's find our overall positioning of everything. So I'm using some ochre, bit of violet. So my background is violet and a bit of ochre painting, layer. So we can have a lot of darkness, okay, straight away. So instead of how we were sketching on a white paper, we can straight away find out some of the highlights on the painting. So I'm going to go for maybe a medium tone. Don't want to go too light too quickly. Okay, that's good. So let's find our window. Now, if you have slightly wider piece, that's great because you can build up on the what's on the shutters in the darkness. If you've got quite a narrow piece and you do want to fit in your window fully, you can always just have a little bit of extra height, maybe more of a shadow on the top. I think that's what I'm going to do, just tiny bit more of a lower space there. Right, so let's divide our space into slightly narrower gap. And next, widths in widths, maybe tiny bit more narrower here. Okay, and a very big one there. So they're roughly, one is smaller, tiny bit bigger, and extra bigger. So just visually see if you can divide that one. And what we'll do, instead of putting perfectly straight lines for the window, to give that window extra length and extra perspective, a bit more dynamics to it, we're going to slant one shutter going in. Okay, so it's very small angle. You might not even see it much because my board with the camera in perspective is getting slightly wider at the bottom. Might see it more like that there. Okay, so I'm going to have, I'll have a narrower line here. You'll see it better as well. Okay. Okay, good. And another line, I'm going to be just tiny bit again leaning in. tiny, 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 tiny bit. So the whole light have almost two slanted, kind of almost like a leaning towards each other gate. Okay. And we said we're going to have a window sill on a small diagonal, and we said we're going to have the top window sill a little bit sharper. Okay. And then I can have my, so I can carry on this window sill because I can see where the shutter is coming. So my big shadow on the left. So again, I'm going to divide that one into half. And that is going to be the gap between the shutter and the actual wall. So that will be a parallel line to my slightly leaning line of the window. Okay. And okay, that one's going to carry it on further. This could stop. I'll keep it simple. An actual shutter is going to be going down, and I'm going to have its thickness. You know what? I'm going to make this line slightly wider just to represent the whole of that gap. All of that gap. These windows, the shutters are kind of made out of two halves. So it's almost like a little folding shutters there. Okay, so I can take this one off. That. Okay, we've got some darker tones there, but it's for a different reason. Okay, so that's my shutter there. And let's work into that perspective. So we have a slight angle there. So it means I can remove a little corner from the bottom. And I mainly need two blocks here, one for the bottom and one for the top, little wooden segments, and the rest is glass, reflective glass. So because I'm painting in light and I'm leaving some darker tones, I'm going to do the frame of the window. So this is going to be the edge of my window. This is going to be the width of it. Okay. There's something hanging on the wall there. There might be something, some utensils, there might be some herbs, there might be something else. It's not too clear, but I want to kind of keep that space. I don't want that shadow to be just a boring shadow. I also can see that part of the ceiling or part of the interior. There's some sort of another similar line. Okay, okay, that's good. All sorts of other detail, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, let's leave that one out. And let's have a look at the shutter on the right-hand side. So that's, if we can see the shutter on the left-hand side, we can see the end of it, we can see the bottom of it, yeah. For the right-hand side shutter, we can just see the corner of it at the bottom, but the top is just going up and we don't know where it is. What we can see a little bit of light on the side here. So that's all I do. I'll just do a little bit more of light it's more of a spacing out how much of that space I want to keep here, of where that proportion of it is going to be. So that's looking quite good. That's looking good. And then we'll be ready to do our perspectives for the what's behind our window. So I'm going to have a little bit lighter colors. I might go for a little bit more violet colors, but light. Okay. And let's find some of these lines which will go in perspective. They will be all parallel to each other in perspective, but they will start going, leaning down towards the left at the top. Somewhere in the center, we're going to have almost a straight line. I'm just going to do it as a plan. Okay. So anything above that line is going to go up on the right or below down. Okay, it's not going to be any sharper than our windowsill though. So maybe that straighter line is going to be actually lower. Maybe that straighter line is going to be somewhere lower. That's how I know where it's going to be. Okay, that's good. Right, so we've got a key rooftop of another shop, or I think maybe another cafe there. So looking at all of the light within the window, that gap is probably not halfway through of the whole light, maybe just a little bit lower. And it's going to be not perfectly straight horizontal, but tiny, 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 tiny bit of a hint of going up. So now I don't need this one. Line. Okay. That's gone there. It's rooftop. I'm looking at the line of the shutter, give me a rough reference. Something's going up, maybe as a part of top of the roof up, and another parallel line to it up. Okay, and then we've got that pointy, a nice pointy end to the roof. And then all the maybe a tiny bit longer. Okay, there's going to be a big lantern, that's okay. And let's find the angle for the tiles. Yes, I can see the tiles. Sometimes there are not tiles on the rooftops, but in this case, the tiles. Okay, so I'm trying to get those angles maybe slightly not perfect. So if they are changing directions slightly, that's a reason for it. Okay. And I'm going to put another line parallel to my window opening. Again, I think it's second floor of that same shop, some sort of similar, just light going there. And there are a couple of windows. Okay, maybe one, maybe part of the balcony or something in there. A lot of decorations in there as well. Okay, so let's leave it like that for the moment. Okay. Because there are loads of details at the back, we're going to have to leave them. What I can see another line within those perspective lines somewhere in the gap of between our shutter and the wall. So this is our highlight. So this is just going to be one of the lines in there. So have nice bold lights in them. And maybe some other darker tone. But again, we can come back to it. Okay. And for the tree at the front, I'll roughly put a couple of lines, maybe slightly darker rather than too light. Without too much details, just some things here in the foreground is going to be catching a lot of light. I haven't done anything in red. Well, I want to do it in red. That's why I haven't done it yet. I haven't done any of the lanterns yet. And there was this beautiful sculpture of them. Classic Chinese oh, I've forgotten the name of the bird now. Crane, that's the one. Now I painted it white, but it will need to be dark. Again, don't have to do it now, but that might just give me an idea how tall or short I might think about it. So I'll plan it here. I think it will be quite nice to have something dark in this corner eventually, because it will balance our shadows. And the cranes will be quite symbolic as well. So if I'll leave it there just as a little swirl rather than too clear image, that's good. And then I want to have a little bit of red for me visually recognizing my key compositional points. So I have some cadmium red, and I'll just dilute it with, well, I'll just use it with a bit of white and keep it quite watery, because I just need it for a little bit of pointers. So my key lantern is that big one. Is that nice big one, taking quite a lot of space here. So I'm just going to fill it all in here to give me an idea. Okay, like a big pumpkin. Let's see how that goes. We'll have another lantern at the top. Now, when I was sketching them with a pencil, I ended up having 4 very similar sized oranges. So I kind of, I've noticed it. So I need to make sure that they vary for me now. So maybe I'll make the top lantern here slightly bigger than the other shapes. Okay. Maybe I'll make a very small lantern somewhere here hidden. I think it's just hidden behind the the roof, and they have different shapes. So some lanterns are like pumpkins, yeah, so they have kind of segments on the left and right, and then something hanging off them. And some of the lanterns are almost like a box, just the structure of the kind of the skeleton of them, and then how the red been applied to it, almost like paper mache. So this is the one we've got here, just got a bit more roundy edges to it. So this is the one we've got here. And then we have almost like a classic European these days lampshade, yeah. So we can see it as a almost like a box as well, but it's round and it's perimeter. So we've got that one somewhere here. I'm going to try to make it onto different lines, so one is not hanging right underneath of the other one. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep maybe this one somewhere here. It's got some sort of picture pattern on it. Okay. And maybe another red is going to be just a little dab. So let's have a look at my volumes of reds. I think I can make this one tiny bit bigger. Maybe I can make that one tiny bit longer. Okay, and that one could be a tiny bit more reduced as well. Okay, so this is my creative thinking rather than working with the photographs. That's where the rules of a painting come in to make it much more pleasant in comparison to the exact photograph. Okay, I think I'm happy with my sketch here. So I have just topped up my colors. So I have some white, ochre, Naples yellow if you have one. If you don't, maybe just some any of the yellows. We'll be just using it, mixing it with extra white. I have my cadmium red, magenta, violet. We will be using, I only got dabs of them, so it will be more for adding small amount of pigment. I'll show you what's our main base of for the colors are going to be. And then any of the blues, again, I have blue gray, which is like Naples yellow, so it's already pre-mixed, a bit of ochre and yellow with white. So the blue gray is already one of my ultramarines mixed with a bit of Payne's gray and white. So just the same thing, so you can make it very easily. And so I've got blue gray, I have ultramarine and some emerald green. So we'll start painting with highlights behind what we see within the window. I have a reasonably small brush because I want to straight away fill in the spaces. So all my dark background, my prime background, is going to preserve my shadow. And I'm going to touch it up at the end, right at the end. So let's start with some of the medium tones within a highlighted area. So there will be loads of ochre and violet with a bit of white. So the same colors we just used will be one of the key colors. And then slowly to that mixture we'll add others. So a little bit of violet to my mixture here. And that's what will give us the color of the walls. Okay, my brush is wobbling here. Let's fix it. Okay, so it's kind of quite a neutral color. So what I'll do, I'll keep it on the side for me to see. Sometimes on the palette, it's reflects differently. Yeah, so the same color as I've been mixing, just slightly different angle of the board, and you can see it slightly differently. So I'll place it for as big spaces. So over the door, we still have some sort of shadow, but here we have that gap of light. So we'll do some blocks, simplified blocks first. Just open up my paint. So it's not runny, it's quite full body paint. I have another one, maybe a dab more of violet. So it's not too yellow. Okay. So those are medium tones, they're not our highlights. And that comes close to that lantern. So we're painting positive spaces. And behind the lantern, we can see that space as well. Now, if you start getting a little bit confused because our lines were of a similar darkness, for example, for me here, don't worry, we'll come back to it. Now, on the photograph, a lot of tiles on the roof look very, very light. So we'll start with them in medium tones, and we'll maybe bring extra color to them. So I'd like to put a little bit more violet into them tiles. So I'll just do a bit of blocking of that here. When we'll do the details and the shadows, we'll start seeing better. So if I'll leave some of the darks, just to show that's my tiles. So I haven't changed the color. This was the same three, white, ochre, and violet combination. It's just the proportion of color has changed. So I have a bit more of that violet-y tone present. Okay, we can come back to the nuances of how the tiles will look afterwards. There is another roof with the tiles just over the lantern. I might just paint it as a block for the moment. Okay. And for the top of it, I think I'm going to use one of my blue grays. Okay, just add in my blue grays, or add a bit of any of your blues and some white. Don't want it to be too light. I'm looking for that medium tone first. And for the top part of the roof, I'm going to add that because it's a slightly different surface. Can mix it with a small amount of violet as well, of that violet-y ochre color we had. Okay, let's make it a bit stronger. Otherwise, it keeps it quite light. So then we can have a bit more of a little bit more of a shadow here. And I'll paint the inside of the roof of that material, or it's some sort of lighter surface. Looks like there's an opening or maybe it's a ripped part of the roof, or those darker shadows will come in later on. Okay. That's need to have more blue in it. Okay, we'll have a look. Just something there for the moment. Okay. And again, any of those ochre, violet and white subtones, maybe going more into the white, into the ochre. And I can paint under the tiles. We're going to have a shadow there later. Just want to see that whole block together. So it looks at the moment all flat. But we know this is not going to stay like that. We're just looking for the basic shapes in there. Now the shutters are really exciting. We've got the glass reflecting in there, but there are also loads of patterns. What's staying light, what's staying dark. So we're going to just do it as, we're just going to keep it as a reflection for later. Right, and this little bit of light, I'm going to put maybe somewhere here. Okay. Now there's some darkness under kind of the rooftop, but it's not going to be as dark as our inside of the cafe here at the tea house. So we're going to deliberately make it slightly lighter. So I'm going to use some magenta and some violet. So within the same colors, with a little bit of ochre, but I want to make it slightly darker version of it, slightly warmer version because of magenta. Okay, so that's quite exciting brownie color. And all I'll do, I'll just do some, probably just a block again of painting, a block around the lantern. That's exciting. We could have left some of the spaces here, but I think maybe the surface will be a little bit too different, the oil surface and the primed surface. However, the color is really good for us. Maybe something here I can leave for some sort of door edge, and I'll paint it close to the tree. Somewhere close here where the tree will be. Okay, let's get rid of that. A bit lower for the tree. The tree could be painted over. And I do like that color. If I'll make it a dab lighter, maybe a dab of ochre, dab of white. I quite like bringing it across into my shutter. So for the moment, I'm going to just think of blocks of colors rather than how exactly it's going to be in my painting, what it is. Is there going to be any nuances? What's going to be light or dark in that window? Okay. I might use it part of my, oh, I can see that one's nice there as well. Okay. So that magenta and violet, same colors we used for the color of the outer shop area. Maybe I can put on my shutter just as a reminder of what color the wood might be. So it's not going to stay any as light as we sketched it originally. Maybe slightly darker to the top with more violet in there. Violet, violet and ochre. Magenta is in there. Maybe more of a darker version of that color below. So I'm looking for, okay, my line's getting wider and wider. I'm looking for the light part of that shutter. We can do a shadow much easier later. So if your line's like mine, maybe doubled in size, it's not a big deal because again, we haven't painted the roof properly yet. We're just identifying the colors. We haven't painted the lantern yet. We haven't done anything inside of the reflective glass there. Okay. And maybe as a little bit of reference point for that color, I'll put some of it here at the top as well. Okay. Now the shutter's starting to look a little bit out of perspective, but again, I'm not too worried because I haven't painted anything around it. So I can tweak it, shape later. Okay. And then while I have a similar color, I'll use it for the top of the town of the second floor here. Now I need to make sure it's not going to be clashing with my lines on the shutter here. So I'll just paint it mainly further away. Again, there are loads of wooden panels, that variety of beautiful ornaments cut out in the wood. There are loads of storytelling. I don't like the idea that my lantern is in line with my pattern, so maybe I'll need to make it slightly bigger. Okay, that was part of my rooftop and I haven't painted it. Okay, it means that I need to come back to it at some point. And all that is going to stay dark. So if you're identifying big shapes here first, that's more important. So then we can work with it. You give yourself a reminder. This is this shape, this is that shape. It's easier for us to deal with them afterwards. Okay. I'll just touch up the roof. I haven't quite filled in, so I had more ochre, violet, and white in there. Okay, that's fine. Okay, this is for our lantern. The more you look at the photograph, as you find those shapes, the more it makes sense. You know, you can start actually zooming in into the details. So I found this beautiful column which hangs down from under the roof somewhere and holds our lantern here. So that gives me an idea where the lantern is going to be, how wide it's going to be. Let me just bring it a tiny bit back. Because I need to know how much of that orange is going to be present here. Okay. A bit more bolder here. Good. And then finally, we have a little bit of light for the bottom for the tree. And then the most exciting starts, painting stages will start. So for the tree, I'm going to use some white, some emerald green, and some ochre. I want to keep it light. I want to keep it more, I'm meant to be putting all these colors here, and I've forgotten. So that's my green here. So I'll just block all of that one here. I'm not putting beautiful branches yet. We haven't done the shadows there yet. All these beautiful branches could come in right at the end. Sounds like I'm leaving everything right at the end, but that's our starting point. Because that's how we focus on the composition. That's how we focus on details. Okay, we're getting there. Might even put a little bit of that green on one of the gaps for the shutters. So now we've done all the medium tones for the view through the window. Let's do a little bit more darker tones. So for example, there are loads of darker tones on the shutter here, kind of reflective dark. So before we go into any darks of the outer tea shop, so I want to see some of the green. So I have slightly darker emerald green, still the same ochre. Okay, that's a darker version of it. And I also want to add a dab of violet to it to make it slightly darker. So that's in comparison. Okay, it's quite dark. Maybe I'll add a dab of ochre to it. Okay, that's a bit lighter. And there are some panels within shutters. I think they're just reflecting other areas of the garden, maybe opposite to it, somewhere diagonally from it. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to paint some of the blocks within that green. And that's how it blocks part of my lantern here. So I don't need to think why it's there. I just need to focus of observing it, and we might find the reason for it, we might not. There's a little bit of light green somewhere here, but again, those are little nuances. As I see them right here straight away, I might do that. Some sort of other green part of that light reflecting. Can even see some silhouettes of people there, but I'll just keep it into that green, whichever way it comes. Bit of patchiness maybe at the top to make it less perfect. And yeah, not overly working it, just like mainly commenting to myself because I want to see it fresher. I want to see, don't want to get overwhelmed with that attention to detail. What I can use some of that green, or maybe making it slightly lighter, for some of the shadows of my tree here. So that might be my slightly darker version here. And the tree has got a lot of sharp ends. And so if I'll have some of the a little bit more spiky strokes, at least at the end of some of the shadows. Okay. I'll keep it simplified for now. And we'll also have some shadows from all the rooftops and create that lovely darker pattern now. So I'll wash my brush. And I actually use, no, I'll start with the same size brush and then maybe I'll use a smaller one afterwards. So I'll need quite a lot of violet, reasonably thick paint because we want to place it in few strategic areas. I have some magenta, so the same color we used before, but just a darker version of it, and some ochre. Okay, so we've got that beautiful, deep wood color, kind of heated, semi Van Dyke tone. Okay, it looks quite blackish there. If I were to dilute it a little more, yeah, I've got that more of a purpley brown look for it. And what I'm interested in now, I'm interested into producing some of the shadows. So in a way, that's why I've left that block of unpainted sections. So classic Chinese tea house. We have some sort of paneling going on. And all we need to do is to create, now this is a lantern, this is not a window. We're not going to get mixed up. We're going to maybe paint some of the square windows. It's not overly perfectly clear how they are developing there, but some sort of net of vertical and horizontal lines. I keep topping up my brush with some fresh paint because my previous layer is getting kind of absorbing all the darkness there. So any pattern you'll invent there will be exciting. There might be little blocks and might be some elongated shapes divided into things. Now don't worry about our lantern, we're going to paint it afterwards. Just kind of semi-ignore it if you need to paint something over it or behind it. What I want to do, I don't want to paint the lantern as if it's the shapes are just around it. Okay, I don't want to look for it to look like it's been cut out. Okay, so that's quite exciting there. And I also think I'm going to keep some more shadows close to my tree. I don't know if it's part of the garden there. Looks like maybe part of that fencing around the shop. So some sort of suggestion. Okay, that's exciting. I'll do something similar at the top floor, but I'm going to use less of that violet and magenta. I want to bring more cooler blues later, but I'll do a little bit, maybe an opening, nice hot day, maybe it's an open kind of full window, full part of the door for the balcony, some more depth. Again, maybe some decorative elements to part of it. Okay, that looks like it's turning, but it's not. It's all together. Okay. And we'll slowly start falling together. Now my next color, I think I might need a dab of Payne's gray because I need to make a bit of indigo. So this is my cool colors corner and I can put my black there. If you haven't got Payne's gray, yeah, black will be fine. Just use a little bit of blue with it. So we're going to mix more of an indigo. So I have my ultramarine, dab of Payne's gray. And I think I'll need a smaller brush. So that's the smaller brush gives me more control. So my oil is not runny, it's quite solid. And I want to have a lovely silhouette, creating the darkness of the open space. Yeah, I might just ignore the lighter support structure. I'll draw it on top, but maybe I'll do that shape first. A little shadow there will be good as well. I can actually even sketch some of these support things with dark tone because I have quite a light paint on the background. It drags it further down. I can put lighter lines on it afterwards. I can just gently tweak my rooftop here as well. Okay, a bit more blue. And let's play with a couple of details here. Maybe just showing the tiles. And other shapes we're not going to see much. It's nice. Okay. Come out quite dark in comparison to the rest. I'll just soften them gently. That's it. Right, and I want to use my blue black more, going to the blue now. So I'm just adding pure ultramarine to this mixture. Within the lantern, there is something nice and dark, maybe the opening of it. So I'm going to start combining details on the wooden panels and anywhere else I might be kind of coming it into. We'll have something happening here where the lantern is holding on, hanging from that lovely support wooden structure. Okay, that becomes too boring with my line, so I'm thinking about some texture on it or just a little bit of a shadow. Okay, something there. Quite a lot of paint underneath, so the color keeps going lighter. So I need to make sure I keep topping it up. Okay. There's another maybe more of a window here. Some sort of exciting pattern. So simplifying things, but still not leaving it out. So that's playing with those little details and playing with a bit of what we have got in front of us. A little shadow here and there. A little variety of color within that window gap. Open view. So just a little bit of something paler. And at the same time, we've got those shadows. I like the shadows from some sort of hanging bunting in Chinese style. So it's become buzzing, busy, exciting. I'm probably going to leave it like that for the moment. Might need a tiny bit more highlights there, but I'm happy with that. And I'll do some shadows in the same blue and black, blue and violet. I'll do some shadows under our tiles here. If I'll start with just a little scale-like outline for the bottom part of the shadow, might be easier to do it that way. And then I can decide on a silhouette of my tiles. Okay, the silhouette of the tiles. My paint is quite thick, so it's much easier to move it about. If it would have been thin and runny, would have been much harder to have those precise strokes. That's why I also have a very small brush to manipulate the stronger, thicker layers. Might do a couple of grooves for the tiles, rows. Okay. Tiny bit more on this rooftop. Some ultramarine and some white could give us a nice shadow. I'll keep it darker. Ultramarine and white. There's a nice corner here. Okay, maybe a dab of violet. It looks a little bit too fresh of ultramarine. Let's try that one. A little bit glowing, that's better. So I'll use maybe the texture of the tiles as well to bring that shadow together. Just a ultramarine line would have been fine. So it doesn't have to be overly complex. Now, when I'm painting the rooftop or any of the view, I'm putting my stroke slightly over the shutter area. I'd prefer to do that rather than when I start painting the shutter, not having enough, the right color in the right place. Okay. And that lovely blue might be somewhere part of my windows in the shop below. Just works beautifully here again against all the nice warm colors. Okay, that might be enough. And anything here, just nicer, fresher, slightly fresher blue. Just a stroke or two sometimes is plenty. Now our shadows are done now. Let's do some small highlights now on our views at the back. So I'll start with Napoli's yellow. If you haven't got it, it's some white, some yellow, any of your cadmium yellows, and a dab of ochre. And that's quite a bold, strong light. I might need to put a tiny bit of white with it so it's not overpowering. But it's a beautiful pre-mixed color. It doesn't take too long to kind of to get it. At any moment we need now have a little bit of blue in my brush. Let me take some of it out. So I'm loading the color and also checking how my brush will behave over a long period of time the second I start applying it. Right, so what I'd like to do, I want to bring some of those highlights to my rooftops. Now this color is going to be mixing with my those violety browns, but I want to see how they will shine. So for example, I'm going to have a little light maybe on the rooftop there, and then I'll be constantly topping up my paints because the rest of the layers are very wet. So I'll put a few strokes there and just see how they will look. Is it going to be too much, or I think it should be okay. Okay, a bit of tone there below. Maybe a little bit of a line to show that rooftop is finished. I'm not overly decided why this shape is not perfectly working there yet. But we'll find out. Okay, maybe some ochre on my brush with that Napoli's yellow to have a couple of details. Okay, that might be a little bit too heavy-handed, so maybe just gentler here. Maybe that will have a bit of support in there. That's it. Again, back to Napoli's yellow with a dab of white. I'll do the larger tiles slightly different. I'll just do them as little elongated strokes because they overlap in one another. So I'll just have an interpretation. Now, every time I'm dragging the color across, allow it to kind of smudge so that violet is there still. We don't want to just to paint over it. Okay, maybe some smaller ones at the back. Want to keep some of the imperfections. Maybe some of the tiles were repaired, maybe some of the newer work, older work. Houses get burned very easily or under the volume of the rains. Very hot terrain in the area. Okay, so that's quite good. So it starts glowing now more. Now, I don't want them to be all the same. Now, left some of them, the top And I'll do a little bit more here in the corner. Using slightly more ochre now. Okay. A dab of orange to make my ochre slightly darker, maybe a bit more here. Okay, let's make it a little bit more golden, a little bit more deeper into that golden tone. So it's quite Van Gogh-y type of strokes. Yeah, that's exciting. Maybe just make them slightly varied by making some of them slightly wider. Okay. I'm just going to double check that I haven't got anything left. If I paint the shutter, that's all carries on beautifully. So that's full of light. That's wonderful. I'm going to use some fresh white, very thick fresh white. A couple of those decorations here at the top, just a few dabs. Again, I have ochre background, so if that mixes together, that's fine. And I also want to use some fresh white for some of the tiles we just painted, to give them a little bit more extra volume. Maybe the light is glancing over certain areas more. So maybe I'll have a diagonal traveling of that white. So not just along the tiles, you know, up on the same line, maybe just a little bit diagonally here. Maybe it's reflection of the glass from the buildings opposite. Yeah, they just made it slightly more festive. I think I need something still here on this rooftop. Bold and light. So when I'm using my small brush, I'm pressing gently in such a way so the paint will remain on the surface of my painting, but at the same time it doesn't spoil kind of the layers below. Oh, I quite like that. I quite like that, whatever that is going on. Just gonna tidy one of my lines here. Just that's better. Okay. And now we can do the lanterns. We can do the lanterns now. Again, let's start with some darker tones on them. I'll pick up my larger brush. We need to go for some beautiful magenta for the shadows. Cadmium red will come in to that, but not immediately. So if I start with magenta, dab of my oil, my taupes here, and some white. Okay, I need just to get it going right. That's too pinky. I don't want that. I want quite nice and dark, so maybe magenta and some violet in there to keep it a little bit more stronger. So we're going to have our shadow a little bit more cooler. Okay, and then we'll have the light, all the highlights on the lanterns really, really bold. So I'm mainly talking about this larger lantern. So I'm going to have that magenta coming in here, magenta and violet, as if I'm painting a pumpkin. Little segments. Might not be as bright in the window reflection, so I might just add a hint of blue to it or just soften something. Okay. My other lanterns, I'm going to keep them with cadmium red. I'm not going to add any magenta. They're going to have a little bit more flatness to them. So my brush is clean again, and let's go for my cadmium red. If I wanted to glow even more, I'll add some yellow to it. For the moment, I'll just add it as it is to my kind of the lower layer of my magenta. So I'm following those pumpkins segments. Okay. A little bit at the top, although on the top we're going to have loads of reflection there. And I'm going to change my brush and have my small one, and I'll paint few dabs of shadows on my other lanterns. So just direct cadmium yellow, cadmium red, sorry. So for example, the base of this long one, might even put quite a thicker stroke, quite relief of a paint, and maybe another stroke on the right hand side. I don't want it to look like a box, so maybe my stroke will need to have a little bit of a curve to it. That's better. The lantern right at the top, we can only see a section of some of the shadows here. Okay, something's here and something's there. We'll do the highlights and we'll make it a bit more three-dimensional. And for a smaller lantern by the shop, I'll put two little strokes maybe at the top of it. And we'll have some lighter tones going down. So that's immediately giving us loads of heat and loads of extra festive atmosphere. So I need a tiny bit of yellow. So some of this yellow mixed with cadmium red and some white. Might need more yellow because the white makes it much more paler. Again, very thick paint. I don't need any oil at all. Very thick paint because we're doing a few strokes here. So I'll have, okay, I need to place this quite thickly. Okay, if it doesn't go because I've got some runnier layers, I just need to persevere and maybe press my brush a few times to make sure that stroke stays there. Okay. A little bit of highlights at the top. A little bit of orange, couple of strokes. Okay, maybe an extra bold, whitish, yellow for the lantern at the top. Really enjoy the thicker layers. Okay, that's maybe the one there. A little dab around. Just a little bit of a dab around here on the side. Okay. You can put some more lighter tones on the sides for the shop lanterns. Mark. Our orangey mark at the bottom could stay reasonably insignificant, yeah? Maybe just something there. It's just present there, it's enough. And finally, I need some more lighter strokes for the larger lantern. So I'm adding more white now to the paint, maybe at the base here. There are some those ribs to the lantern. If I'll just do some of the highlights at the top first. Got that lovely chunky pumpkin shape. So if I'll do some of those shapes first, some of those highlights, and then I can wipe my brush so I can end up with a fine line, fine tip, and then I can do the lines of the ribs. Okay, so just can just drag it through. Maybe even on the edge or partially on the edge. Okay. Then goes slightly shallow towards the center of it, much more overly to the sides. You don't have to drag the line all the way across. We can just have a tip, kind of the feel for it. Now my colors within those shapes are not quite as precise as I wanted to, so I can get back to that shortly. Okay. I can just drag them and merge them. Just double check what color I've got on my brush. Maybe that cadmium red. I can just drag those colors a little more. That's how I'm naturally mixing that magenta and making the lantern a bit more three-dimensional. Okay, it's glowing now. Okay, just make this blue violet a little more settled as well. And I'll make my ribs here that on the lantern, they look a little bit too light at the top, so they will have a little bit of a shadow. A little bit of a shadow. Same tiny bit for the bottom. Okay, so that glow is there. And then I finally touch up some highlights of white, of fresh white. Just sliding it down the sides. Okay, so if it's quite chunky, it's even better. Gives a beautiful atmosphere. And I just do a curve, a slightly better curve. Okay, quite a nice semi-decorative feel for it. Love that. And while I have a similar pale color, maybe I'll bring it in the gap of my, this is going to be the gap between my window and shutter. Any of the same color could go maybe on top of the lantern here. There's some part of the white picture here as well. And maybe part of it's going to stay in the shade. And then little nuances of the borders or pattern. Just few dabs of dark. Few darks. Showing the end of the lantern. Now here for my lantern, I'm going to have little golden tail. So I'll use some ochre and some yellow together. So it's starting again, not a fresh lightest tone. So they're going to cover some of my roof and part of my shutter. Okay, so that's hanging down. That's giving it a lovely depth. Might be just somewhere there as well. Actually, I don't think I need any highlights on that. That's good. That's all really glowing now. Fantastic. I just need to touch up the tree and then quick sketch around the window because that's the major work we've done here already. So my tree was done with some ochre, emerald green, and some white. Okay, maybe even some of them. Napoli's yellow. Just need to make it quite bold and yellow rather than just green, just checking it against my previous colors. Yes, maybe a tiny bit more lighter color. So I just want to have those branches here a little bit more elegantly applied, a bit more pointy. So again, my small brush helps me to carry those strokes. Slightly different direction to show the branches coming out over the shadow. And I'll do a couple of more ends to this section. That's good. And maybe somewhere here as well. Just keep checking them. The tip of my brush is not overloaded with the paint. Any highlights as I want to do on the trees, I can do maybe with Naples yellow. Just on top, a couple of strokes here. Again, then we have the similarity of the strokes with the rooftop. Maybe even a couple of dabs of white here to show that boldness of the light, the heat of the day. Okay, I don't want them in rows. That's beautiful. That's nice. Lovely and fresh. Excellent. And now finally, we're just gonna do touching points for the windows. Right, I'm going to swap my palette so I can have looser paints and work quite quickly now. So for example, I've sketched some of the details here. So I want to keep them slightly lighter. Whatever I've got on my brush, I've got a bit of cadmium red. I'm going to go for any of the warm colors anyway. So that's what will work. So some more violet in here. So I want to have maybe even more of that cadmium red, a bit of depth to it. So maybe something, there might be some light here. Very sketchy, very, very quick, very suggestive. Okay. Something's hanging there. A bit more, so I'm repeating my lines, just maybe slightly wider. The windowsill is going to have some coolness in it. That's good. I'll keep that. And maybe part of my shutters here. I'm going to have a little bit of light here. That's my gap. Okay, that's okay. That's going to stay here. And there might be a little bit of light over here. I'm going to preserve. Okay. And next I'll go for some Payne's Grey. I've got some Payne's Grey there ready. A little bit more violet as I'm running out of it. Now at this stage, I want to stand up so I can have larger strokes and quicker moves. So my Payne's Grey, I'm going to have much more softer diluted paint. So Payne's Grey and some violet, or any of this color we just had before. Okay, maybe a bit of that magenta. So partially our background color will remain, but we want to have some of it or most of it is painted, even if it will be with a loose layer. Now I'm still using a small brush only because I need to be able to create similar kind of lines, kind of sharper lines, maybe for the edges of the doors, of the shutters. I have some darker spaces here, maybe some of them even darker, maybe more blue. And some of these. And there's loads of that coolness. Blue is going to be here. The only thing I'll be following is some of them perspective lines. So I'm going to double check. If anything is out of perspective, pretend that something is an old piece of wood, an old structure, something is creating that wobbliness. Okay. So that will be good. Okay. Some noise coming out from outside, so that stopped it. A little bit of darkness on here, that lovely blueness. It's going to be the edge of my shutter here. Okay. Slightly, I might need a smaller brush for this because I want to do some depths. Sometimes the depths of finer lines easier to do with not just a small brush, but also with thicker paint. So then the brush is not sliding within the volume of the paint we already created. Now, don't want to do a perfect straight line. I'm breaking it down gently, and it also allows me to pick up other colors and make that tension a little bit more stronger black, a little bit less, a bit more bluey, a little bit of something, yeah. So just make that variety here as well. Okay, and I'll have some nice tension here for my door. My panel. Okay, maybe something else as a pattern, reminding us of imperfection of the reflections. That's lovely, playful work. Again, it's probably just something reflecting, picking up different layers. Good. And now I can work very quick. Okay, so that remains where it is. Just softens, really loose strokes. You can sketch with that brush. Okay, a little bit more softer paint. Okay, don't want that one on its own. Okay, that's all blended into our background. A little bit of darkness continuing there. Dabs. Okay, a bit more tension next to the window so it's not getting too light. Okay, let's do the other side by painting this first main line over. So I'm smudging into all my standing out tiles. So that's all good. Any of the uneven surfaces there. That's great. Just a little bit of that blending. Might not even need all of it, and maybe some more next to that highlighted gap. We'll come back to that very quickly. Okay. Any other tension under our window? Fantastic. Love that. The depth of it. I love that. Partially interior feel. Okay, and then last few strokes of coolness. I've got this white, bluey gray, maybe for my windowsill to have that light present. Maybe a little smudge of a shadow. And then any of that small, that blue appearing for our shutter somewhere here. How that light gently travels, a bit more bolder in the little gaps. Don't want to do it too perfect. And the same, I'm going to travel some of the light. So it's more of a light than what we actually can see there. Okay, makes the window as well slightly quirky, less perfect. Okay, something there. Okay, let me just step away from it for a moment. Any of the extra highlights areas, maybe just to get a few last touches here. Okay, I think maybe this gap might be too big. Let's just make it slightly smaller, tiny bit more precise, but I do like how the warmth within a coffee shop is uniting. So I haven't painted the window overly precise. That's better. It's have that feel of the unknown. Yeah, right. I don't like just a thin line here. Maybe just bringing it partially down here, partially. Okay, that's it. Right, I think I'm going to stop at that. I love the glowing light on the side. Loads of work put in that center, but kept exciting, kept vibrant without overworking it. So I hope you have a good chance to have a play with it, just making sure that my panel looks in perspective here as well. And maybe a tiny bit of highlight here. I can spot that one here. So it's a tiny bit more separate from my shop. That's better. Fantastic. Really exciting, nice sketch here as well. But thank you very much for staying with me today. And I look forward to seeing your final paintings as usual.